Okay. So good morning, everyone. Myself, Ajit Kanitkar, along with my co-panel members, Niraj, Nikhila, Abhishek, and Anish as our member of the technical team. Happy to welcome you on this Friday morning. I am one of the co-editors and authors of the book, Farming Futures, Reimagining Producer Organizations in India. The book was published about 2 months ago on 27th April by Routledge. So what we decided was that while the Indian edition or the South edition, South Asian edition of the book, we will soon see a copy of that in a few months. We thought that we would organize this series of discussions where we actually have conversation with the authors of this book. In this particular publication, we have 15 case studies. 12 of them are FPOs or farmer producer companies or organizations, and the remaining 3 are case studies of federations from Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Madhya Pradesh. The book is a result of almost 18 months of a very intensive and a different kind of a collaboration. When I say an intensive and a different kind of a collaboration, normally researchers like me, my colleague Dr. Shambhu Prasad, professor in IRMA, other researchers sitting in universities, we go to the field, ask questions, come back with data, and then write about something. This book is different because we have sort of collaborated with practitioners who are then and there in the field, working in FPOs, working with promoting organizations, based in NGOs, and they are actually at the front of the interactions and actions and change processes, if I may say so that. So we have come together, 28 of us actually. Over 2 years, we sort of had a framework, and then we wrote, and then we peer reviewed, and then we again reviewed it through some external organizations and so on and so forth. So it's a intensive interaction between academics and development practitioners. We also realize that we are collecting a lot of information and insights, which is probably sometimes beyond the scope of a particular chapter in a book. So we created blogs, 44 of them, and many of you would have seen that. If not, Abhishek would put that in the chat box, which is a small farm income website, and there you would see the blogs which have also come out of the field work between the academicians and the practitioners, and they are again on FPCs and producer organizations. Another interesting aspect of the publication is that of the 12 FPO studied, 7 of them are of women farmers, which is a notable and an extraordinary thing. The Mahanadi FPC, which is the topic of today's discussion, is covered extensively in chapter 6 of the book. As I said, the book you will see for downloading slightly expensive because of the euro and the rupee exchange rate. But the first chapter and the introduction chapter, the first 2 chapters are free downloading so that you get a kind of a glimpse of what is coming in the subsequent book. Today's case study appears at chapter 6. It is on Mahanadi FPC, located in Chhattisgarh in the district of Kanker. And the primary commodity that the FPC is engaged in terms of its business operation, is as NTFP, non-timber forest produce. And then today we have Niraj and Nikhila, who have actually authored this case study after extensive field work. We also have with me Abhishek. Abhishek Saxena is a PhD scholar, a doctoral scholar at Institute of Rural Management, Anand. He's also a very solid contributor to this book that I just mentioned in the opening lines. So today, me and Abhishek, we will have a conversation with the authors. The plan for the conversation is something as under. For the first 25 to 30 minutes, me and Abhishek would kind of facilitate the conversation with Niraj and Nikhila. Remaining 30 minutes, we would encourage all participants to come in with question and answers, comments, observations. Use the chat box creatively to share your observations, to mention your question and answers. And Niraj and Nikhila will be happy to take up those questions in the remaining part, maybe 11:30 to 12 onwards. This is a 1 hour conversation. We also have a possibility of one of the members of the FPC joining in, and we will be happy to have conversation with this gentleman, maybe in English, Hindi. For this conversation, also feel free to change your conversation language, a bit of Hindi, a bit of English, a bit of is, I think, because what is important is exchange of ideas. So again, a warm welcome to all of you, the fourth in the series. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Ajit, for the introduction. I'll just briefly introduce our authors to the attendees. So Niraj Joshi is a senior research associate with the Global Economic Development and Biosphere Program at Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences in Stockholm. Over the past decade, he has also led research projects in managing commons, climate change adaptation in agriculture and ecological entrepreneurship, including the research and education programs at 2 flagship organizations of Aga Khan Development Network in India and also in Mozambique. He has more than 2 decades of experience in managing, monitoring, and evaluation of environmental and rural development programs. The other author, Nikhila Shastry, currently works as a team lead in livelihood practices at Catalyst Management Services, Bangalore. She has over 6 years of experience in the livelihood domain across the functions of grassroots implementation, consulting, research, and technology. She holds a master's in livelihood and social entrepreneurship from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. So Niraj and Nikhila, I welcome you to this conversation on Mahanadi case that you authored for the book. And now, after the introduction, I request Ajit to go ahead with the discussion.
Thank you, Abhishek. Niraj, my first question to you, which is a set of one question and a small kind of a sub question to that, as to if you could share a bit about the context of Chhattisgarh and more so of Mahanadi, because you have been working on several livelihood projects, but if you could give us a quick overview of the context and what was the motivation for you as a researcher to study this FPC, Niraj?
Thank you, Ajit, and warm welcome to everybody for this panel discussion. Good morning and nice and happy to be a part of this. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. And coming to Ajit's question, yeah, Mahanadi is a very unique kind of FPC, especially because of its geography and the demography of communities that make up FPC. So it's located in Chhattisgarh, as Ajit mentioned, and it is in the erstwhile Bastar district. So Chhattisgarh, as most of you might be knowing, is almost 80% to 100% tribal. And there are several tribal communities like Gonds and others who are kind of residents of this geography. And it's a hilly, forested landscape. Most of the area is under forest. It is a high, I think more than 30% or 40% is under forest. And therefore, most of the villages and people live inside the forest. Of course, it is getting urbanized, as most places are, but still most places are very remote, cut off from markets, and not easily accessible even by road. Some places the roads are in bad condition, and due to forests, you don't have access to certain villages and so on. So it's a remote geography, tribal dominated, forested landscape. And as we all know, most of the forests have a lot of non-timber and forest produce, both timber and non-timber forest produce. And therefore, Chhattisgarh also is having a huge number of fruit-bearing trees like custard apple, jamun, tamarind, very high quality of these fruits and fruit-bearing trees, and also medicinal trees and mahua and so on. And coming to the sub-question which Ajit posed, my interest, I come from an ecology background. So I've always been kind of doing field visits to forests, and I'm interested in wildlife as well as people living in and around forests. And therefore, that is the natural kind of bent that I had in choosing Chhattisgarh and this FPC to study. The second part was that having worked with the Aga Khan Foundation and Aga Khan Development Network for close to 2 decades, I have always been interested in equity issues because their focus has been on equity, including the marginalized, all kinds of programs, and women as well. And therefore, I was curious to understand how tribals are managing, because normally tribals are practicing a different kind of agriculture than the so-called progressive farmers or forward castes and so on. So I was curious to understand how they are coping up and managing it with this FPC. So I'll stop here and let Ajit proceed.
So, Nikhila, our next question is to you. Now, you have been involved with Vritti for quite some time, and Vritti has been involved in promotion of several FPCs, FPOs across the country. So, I would like to know from you that, what's the broad philosophy? How does Vritti go about, its promotional activities? And from your experience of Mahanadi, what were the similarities or differences, or the kind of challenges you faced, Vritti faced, or the team learning that Vritti had while promoting Mahanadi in Kanker in such a remote area?
Sure. Thanks, Abhishek. So at Vritti, the main goal is to empower farmers and nurture their entrepreneurial potential. It aims to address the various challenges faced by smallholder farmers by providing them with end-to-end integrated services, diversified options in agri-allied, and non-farm spaces for income generation, providing technology support, and establishing a sustainable ecosystem at the cluster level. So under this approach, Vritti helps farmers form interest groups, women enterprise groups, and FPOs, which receive support in enterprise development, market linkages, value addition, and marketing of their produce. So the focus is always on building scalable enterprises, and through collaboration, action has to be enhanced. So while farmers and their these producer level groups initiate and continue their journey, it is also important that they also are supported continuously throughout. In this context, Vritti incubates clusters at the block level, which are called the business acceleration units, uh, uh, primarily to establish that ecosystem for the farming enterprises to become sustainable and scalable. So the incubation period lasts for almost 10 years with significant support in terms of technical financial provided during the initial 5 years. That includes institution building, capacity building, financial assistance, market linkages, and other operational support in running the FPOs. So Mahanadi is one of those 29 FPOs that Vritti has incubated, which is a very high touch program. What sets it apart is the bundle of services which is being provided through this model, which is called threefold model, which distinguishes it from the other FPOs in the country. So during the incubation process, the Vritti also has faced several challenges. Firstly, because the FPO being located in Kanker, which is adjoining to a forest, initially the focus has been very top down, giving improving crop productivity, especially for paddy. But then again, that was under minimum support price. Very limited impact has been seen. Then Vritti has shifted its focus to value chain establishment and finding alternate ways to improve the income of tribal households. Second challenge Vritti has seen is the remote location of those FPOs also, which made it very difficult for the Vritti experts and leads to provide regular support, especially in they had to overcome logistical challenges. They have to frequently travel to these remote areas to offer assistance, and these 29 FPOs are spread. At that time it might be much lesser than the 29 FPOs I'm saying, but they had to travel regularly to all these FPOs, which are spread across 6 different states. Third challenge is that the organized markets for NTFP products do not exist, right? Like agri commodities, where we still see some organized markets there. Vritti also at that time lacked expertise in the NTFPs and value addition, but recognize the potential of the custard apple as a marketable product. So with the support of the district collector and the grant from NABARD and the World Bank, the FPO, we are able to conduct surveys, and it received hands-on training in the manufacturing of the pulp. And the FPO is also able to explore the Vritti, and FPO is also able to explore the involvement of women in various processes such as harvesting, grading, processing, and grafting.
Nikhila, let
So
me interrupt
this
you
part,
here. Let me interrupt you
yes,
here. You talked about the challenges, and you started a little bit about the next question that I had in mind. So let me just frame the question so that you can be a little more focused, and also you can be a little bit brief on. So we heard Niraj talking about NTFP. We heard you talking about challenges, and therefore, what's the kind of a business model? So rather than getting into the specific commodities, can you be a little bit sharp in saying, therefore, what's the business model in response to the challenges of the context and the challenges of the commodities that the community is involved in, and the remoteness and the access issues and so on and so forth? Over to you.
sure. So again, the primary challenge with any NTFP is the perishability of the product, right? And also there are not many storage spaces available. So to address this challenge, the FPOs and the farmers have adopted a very collective and shared responsibility approach as part of their business model. So they established a decentralized system where the collection, aggregation, and the processing of these NTFPs were carried out with the producer groups, and then the FPO was responsible for the sales of the final product. But here the producer groups not just involvement in the collection, but they also pooled in their resources to purchase and aggregate the custard apples. um, uh, to ensure the quality and shelf life of the custard apples also throughout the year, every year, they've also received the training on the best practices, which is sustainable harvesting practices, which is ensuring that the custard apple is plucked with the stalk intact. So this kind of training is also has been introduced into the business model, right from the harvesting to primary processing and sales of the product. I hope I'm clear on this and brief on this.
Sure, sure, sure. Neeraj, I sort of come back to you.
Yes.
We heard the business model, which is responding to the challenge of perishability of NTFP, which is inherent in the way commodities. You talked about jamun, the custard apple, which is of course very, very perishable, and the business model, which is around storing, sorting, pulp processing that Nikhila mentioned. How has been the overall business performance over the years, say last 3, 4, 5 years, pre-corona, corona time a little bit hit, maybe, I don't know, and now after corona? So maybe just give some overview and some broad numbers, need not go into the rupees and lakhs kind of thing, but just a broad overview of the financial performance of the FPC. Yeah, over to you, Niraj.
Okay. So just before I get into that finance part a little bit, I just wanted to add a couple of quick things to what Nikhila has already mentioned about the NTFP. So part of the business model has also been the focus on agri inputs by the FPO, which has kind of continued from its earlier avatar, not exactly an avatar, but an earlier focus on improving agri inputs in the region, because being a tribal region and being remote, the inputs excess and supply was a big problem, which Vritti had helped a lot to streamline, and by linking up with various agencies like IFCO and Bayer and others. And so the FPO till date continues to deal with and earn from agri inputs a small commission, not very much, but at least part of the business model has been to supply quality agri inputs, and also agri outputs along with livestock such as poultry, piggery, and some agri outputs like millets and paddy and so on, paddy which already Nikhila has mentioned. So it is a kind of multi-product approach that the FPO has taken, because obviously, as Ajit and Nikhila have all mentioned, the NTFP business is seasonal, and therefore custard apple has a season, for example, from mid-September to December, and after that a little more, but then it ends. And fortunately for the FPC, There are also other NTFPs like Tamarind, Mahua, and Jamun, which have different seasons through the year than custard apple, and therefore the FPC is able to actually earn some bit from those products or NTFPs along with agriculture as well. So I'll just quickly have to refer to a sheet on the finances because they are not offhand. I can't remember them because it's been some time. So I'll just quickly open the file if you don't mind. And yeah. So in terms of financial performance from 2015 to 21 roughly, the total revenue has risen from 4,23,425 to 68,39,349. So it's a fairly big jump. Of course, there was a setback during the pandemic years from 2019-20 up to 2020 roughly. So 2.5 years roughly. A total profit after tax has been a little low. So it was 58,527 rupees for the year 2016-17. 2015-16, they made some losses. The FPC had made some losses, but they recovered in 16-17. And then it has been steadily rising up till the pandemic. But in the pandemic, again, there was a big setback. And then they are slowly now recovering. They have made a profit of 12,195 in 2021 financial year, for which the figures are available with me. The share capital has been rising steadily, but I would say a little slowly, and that is one of the challenges we can take up in a later question or debating part later on in the session. But that has risen slowly, though it is rising, and that is one of the challenges the FPC has faced. Reserves and surplus currently are 1,50,000 plus with the FPC. Fortunately, long-term borrowings have been very low. They had a loan from Bank of India and some other sundry lenders, which they have already repaid.
Niraj, what's the membership? What's the membership price?
Membership, Ajit,
Roughly?
I think it is hovering around 700, according to what I spoke to Satish Mishra ji a few months back.
Nikhila, you can also add some, if you have some access to some numbers, you can add one or two
Yeah.
lines.
Yes, sure. So within the first 3 years of operations, I mean, Niraj ji has already mentioned from 4 lakhs in the first year, but again it has declined over a period of 1-2 years. But within the first 3 years of operations, I mean, Mahanadi has also been able to show a significant positive performance in terms of the revenue. Hence, it was able to also get 6 lakh working capital loan from Bank of India in the year 2017 to 18. And then in the next year, there's an increase in revenue almost up to 62 lakhs, where it's not just custard apple that has contributed, but maize has actually, the procurement of maize has actually contributed to the increase in revenue. There is a decline in the revenue in the subsequent years, but again, there is a recovery. FPC has been facing with this working capital issues. To address this working capital issues, also FPO employed certain strategies like rotating the credit and also the credit terms with the buyers and also the farmers. So they're able to leverage the goodwill with certain individuals to negotiate better credit terms. Internally, during the pandemic, also internally within Catalyst Group, the FPO was able to raise a 2 lakh working capital loan from one of the sister organizations of Vruti during the pandemic. So overall, the financial performance has been, both positive and challenging. But they're able to show resilience in attracting share capital. Yes.
Abhishek, over to you. Thank you, Nikhila and Niraj, both.
So my next question actually is to both. To you, Nikhila, first. Now when we have talked about business models and we have also talked about financial performance, but for any enterprise, actually, it's it's very important to understand the governance and the kind of management that happens at the stage at the level of CEOs and BODs and their understanding of the business, their processes, their equations with each other. So would you like to give some key features of the structure and how the governance and management of the FPO, the enterprise, happens? And maybe later on, Neeraj can also add on to it from his perspective as a researcher.
Sorry, Dheeraj, would you want to go first?
Sure, sure. No problem. So, yeah, Abhishek, actually, it is an interesting case in Mahanadi's case, of the governance because it's a tribal geography, and obviously, Chhattisgarh presents a different scenario because there is a problem of lack of skilled human resources. So that is where the Naxal affected region part actually most affects under these scenario, because historically it has been sort of controlled by Naxal people in the geography in which Mahanadi is located. Education has been not very good. So there have been fewer schools and fewer hospitals. So lack of skilled human resources has been a challenge faced by Mahanadi. But having said that, uh, um, in terms of governance, there are certain interesting aspects also of Mahanadi. For example, uh, Vritti, of course, has played a large role in supporting the governance of the FPC and continues to do so in some way or the other. But the board of directors are basically from 11 villages, which were the first villages to kind of join the FPC. So there's one member of the BOD from each of these 11 villages. There is one woman member, and significantly, the CEO currently, Nagina, is Nagina still the CEO? Nikhila, please correct me if I'm, yeah. So Nagina, who's still the CEO, is a local person. And very interestingly, she joined as a field level resource person and she has risen through the ranks and become CEO and continues to be the CEO since the past few years. So that is the kind of structure that is there. But apart from that, interestingly, there have been this old initial group of farmers who have actually played a big role in mobilizing shareholders for the FPC. And they continue to kind of play a big role in motivating people to join the FPC. So in that sense, it is locally driven. It is fairly democratic. They have a monthly meeting uh, uh, regularly. And interestingly, they have several committees to kind of spearhead different functions. So they have a marketing committee, they have a procurement committee, they have a finance committee, and so on. And these committees have representations from the board of directors. The CEO also is a member secretary in most committees, and also then there are some of these other members from the shareholders who are part of these committees. And therefore, it has been functioning in a fairly democratic way. Of course, the financial part to set up systems and the compliance part, Vritti and the business advisory unit set up by Vritti have played a large role in kind of setting up systems. And they are still doing it whenever the need comes because financially, as we all know, it's a challenge, financial literacy with farmers and especially tractors. That is some part of the story, but I'm happy to answer any specific question that you may have with regard to governance in addition to what I've said. And Nikhila also, please feel free to add.
Yeah, mostly you've covered, sir, on the governance part. On the management side of it, while in 2000, by 2018, the funding has also stopped from the British and we were not able to raise more funds. So it was very difficult for us, for the FP also to retain the talent, especially working in the capacity of a CEO. So Nagina Netam, who is currently the CEO of Mahanadi, initially she was a field level resource person called an ABA, and then she got promoted to a field coordinator, where she continued to work almost 4 years, and the directors have recognized that she's very passionate, she's very committed, and then they have elected her as a CEO in 2019. So this is one point I would like to add on the governance and management part as well.
We will kind of open up this conversation for Q&A, but I have questions to more of recall questions, if you may say. Niraj, as you went for the field visits, do you recall any memorable conversation or insights that was a kind of a moment for you, or it challenged you, or it reaffirmed some of the conviction that you had? Can you narrate one or two such conversations during your study? Just you can be a little more descriptive also, so that all of us can sort of experience that kind of context. If there were any such one or two incidents, you can sort of take 2-3 minutes time. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So there were many actually. Of course, it's been some time. It's been more than 2 years or close to 2 years since we went to the field. I think sometime in 2021. But yes, one which particularly comes to my mind is when we were sitting with a group of women. It was an SHG, and we had been visiting several villages to talk to different people. And this was one SHG. I forget the name of the village, but the women were very vocal, and they were very articulate about what changes. We just asked them, what are the changes that you've seen after the FPC has been kind of established and registered? And they said several things. One of the things which I am able to recollect at this moment is that they mentioned how they were struggling with custard apple collection and sales and earlier, and they had no training or any idea about how to collect custard apple or how to go to markets and sell. What they were doing is they were actually just waiting for some traders who were historically coming to that region to collect custard apple, and then they would sell them at whatever rate they got, just about 2 or 3 rupees for a basket, which is about 30 kg or so. And they used to hardly earn anything. And even while collecting, they could, there were a lot of losses and so on in collection. So then they said how they went to Udaipur to learn different things, how to operate pulping machines, they were given trainings in Bastar itself, in Kaker, about how to pluck custard apple with the stalk so that, the fruit lasts for a longer time and so on. And the most significant part was these SHGs, actually, many of them are not even shareholders of the FPC, but they are still benefiting. And the enthusiasm they showed, even despite not being part of the FPC, but earning it and somehow contributing to the growth of the FPC, was very interesting for me. I had not thought that there would be SHGs who would not be directly linked to the FPC and still be so vocal about the FPC and how they have grown and got empowered. How they dealt with markets and traders was another thing they shared with us. How they now even some of them go to the markets nearby in Raipur or surrounding taluka places, and how they negotiate with the traders in the agriculture mandis. That was another interesting thing that they shared. And how they went to Udaipur to learn. That was very interesting when they shared how they learned how to make pulp from custard apple. That was very interesting. And so some of these one can expect due to trainings and all. But this part about SHGs not being directly part of the FPC and yet contributing and earning from it was very interesting for me. I had not expected to sort of learn that. I was expecting a typical FPC kind of structure with farmer interest groups and then they contributing to the FPC and so on. But I believe that the farmer interest group model did not work in this place, which is interesting, which can happen. So typically in AKRSP, it was the farmer interest groups which were formed, and then, they will contribute to the FPC and so on. But this case, it was the SHGs, and how it was leveraged by the FPC and the SHGs to both of their advantages. The mutual benefit that both gained due to the FPC, its work. That was an aha moment for me, because that was something which I had not kind of been prepared for. So that was one thing which comes to mind. But in interest of time, I'm happy to wait till Nikhila shares her experience, maybe one more, and then we can come back to that.
Yeah, I just have one. There are many programs, being run by the NGOs, especially working for the empowerment of women farmers, tribal households, uh, agency of the women to go out, right? Their uh, commuting distance also from their home to the markets. So while we keep talking about it, during my field visit, I had gone to one of the women's house uh, in the evening, and she was mentioning that the collection of this custard apples, starts from aggregation, also starts from morning till, and it goes till late at night, and she is involved during in this aggregation process even at night as well. So that is one aha moment for me. Second is that there I could see more assets in her household only. Not assets, I would say, as in the utilities. For example, there is an LED TV in her house. So there is a cable in her house. So this is, an aha moment for me. And she mentioned that this is a result of the work that she's doing under this Mahanadi FPC. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Niraj and Nikhila, for sharing your insights and reflections from the field. Uh, as we move towards the end, this is technically the last question before we, open it for other people to, for a wider discussion or maybe answer a few questions that have arisen. So, what, according to you, can be learned from this case? I mean, what is the learning for promoting institutions for the NGOs and other? I mean, in today's parlance, what is the learning for CBPOs that are promoting collective enterprises, FPOs, especially who are working in tribal areas, who are working in difficult areas? I would pose this question to both of you, Neeraj and Nikhil. Nikhila, you may go first.
Okay, sure. Um for It is very important. I'll keep it very brief. Sometimes I tend to go a bit more descriptive. It's very important to understand the marketable surplus, and and there has to be a focus on value addition. Especially in the tribal areas, you need to choose certain products which has enough quantities, and assess the marketable surplus that is available within that region. So this will help determine the feasibility of even setting up FPOs in terms of the potential demand and market opportunities. Second is, unlike agri commodities, there are market information systems missing, especially in NTFP. And there is also a minimum support price offered for the minor forest produce, which sometimes it doesn't percolate down to the tribal households also. So how can the promoting institutions can come up or collaborate with other organizations in setting up this market information systems, especially in the NTFP part. The third part is, there is already this Vandhan Yojana scheme set up in 2018 by TriFed and Ministry of Tribal Affairs. They are also talking about market-led enterprise model, and they are also setting up this Vandhan Vikas Kendras. Almost from the last report, I see that there are around 1,500 Vandhan Vikas Kendras who are engaging with self-help groups, especially in the collection, processing, and marketing of this NTFP produce. So the scheme not only just is limited to gathering NTFPs from the forest, but it also helps in allowing the SAGs in engaging farming and agriculture production and post-harvest processing and value addition of all the different NTFP and other products as well. So how can the promoting institutions can collaborate maybe with TriFed under this Vandhan Yojana scheme, leverage the existing networks resources, and for the betterment of the tribal households. The last one thing which I would definitely want to talk about, which we had experienced last year in Mahanadi FPC also, is the climate change. So we were all prepared. We estimated around 30 tons of custard apple pulp, right? Not just custard apples. And we got into an agreement also with the buyer. There was a signed agreement to purchase 30 tons of custard apple pulp. But the flowering did not happen, the fruiting did not happen, and eventually the contract also did not happen. There was low productivity in custard apple. So no, it is advisable to, diversify the focus and not just, focus only on one product, but explore a basket of products that can contribute to the income of tribal households. This diversification of risks will only mitigate the risks for the tribal households. So yeah, these are the points that I would like to share with, and also request all the promoting institutions to consider in, when they're promoting FPOs in the tribal areas.
Rich, you would like
Yeah.
to add something?
Yes. Surely. So I think in addition to what Nikhila mentioned, there are several other things which one can consider while, the lessons emerging from this study. There are several lessons emerging. One is, of course, that tribal geographies may require much larger incubation periods than typical, geographies which are non-tribal and more irrigated areas and with forward or progressive looking farmers and so on and so forth. So one is that the promoting agency or the incubator has to be aware that they have to be in for at least 10 years, if not more. And that is what we are learning from this case study as well as others which are part of this book, that it requires at least a decade of sustained hand holding and different kinds of support. So that is something which one needs to take note of. The second thing is the NGOs that are the promoting institutions also have to build certain capacity to kind of handhold. What we are finding is sometimes they have a lopsided capacity in social issues and not so much in business or entrepreneurial issues. So typically NGOs are not really very good at business themselves. So they also learn along the way. But since we already have certain case studies and from this book, it is becoming very clear that certain skills have to be developed by the promoting institutions themselves. That is the second thing. The third thing is that, let's just a moment, I'll just, one point which I had noted here. Yeah. So the third thing is, like Nikhila mentioned, multiple products, multiple portfolio of products. But even in the case of NTP, for example, if we look at NTFP closely, which this FPC has been dealing with, and as much as 50% of its income comes just from custard apple, then it's important not to put all the eggs in one basket. And therefore, perishable products like custard apple have to be backed up with another non-perishable or a longer lasting product. So in this case, for instance, we can talk about tamarind, which is a very good quality, which is coming from this region, which has an international value, as I was talking to some people from Vritti and other places, that this tamarind, which is coming out from the forests of Chhattisgarh, is of very high quality. It has a very long shelf life. So it's a less perishable product than custard apple. And therefore, it makes all the more sense to kind of develop its value chain either parallelly or sort of going along with this, so that if there is something like the pandemic, they can actually depend on this as a backup. So that was the third thing. There were a few other things also, but I don't know if we have enough time for me to continue rattling on, or we can stop for others.
I think I'll interrupt like a bit here. We are slightly behind by about 7 to 10 minutes, and there are 3 questions. First 3 is by Jahnavi, which is a little bit outside the purview, but I will take that question. Do the farmers in the region that the FPC is working, do they practice organic farming? You can give a one-liner. No need to go on kind of describing, but what has been your experience? That's a question by Jahnavi. So how would you respond to that question?
Nikhila, you can.
I would say no, but NTFP, anyways, they don't cultivate, so it's organic only, we can say. But
Okay.
in terms of the other products, yes, it.
Okay. There is another question. Thanks, Nikhila, for that. Which Niraj you can take, which is from Geeta Ji, Geeta Oza. She says that why the SHGs are not institutional, why not institutional members? Are they sort of losing an opportunity to be a part of the governance system? I read her question. SHGs were not shareholders. My curiosity is that why they didn't become shareholders, and becoming shareholders, not becoming shareholders restrict their opportunity in decision making forum. maybe if you could respond to that question.
Yeah, so I think we'll have to cross-check with the exact data, but I think some of them were not when we met them 2 years back. Some of them were not shareholders in the FPC. This is not for all the SHGs. Of course, a lot of them, the women members of those SHGs, are shareholders in the FPC, but there were some in some villages which were not actually shareholders. So, I mean, at this moment, you are right that if they become members, they would, of course, enjoy a much more higher kind of ownership over the FPC and maybe other benefits as well. But as far as I understood from the conversations we had in the field, was that the FPC does not really kind of avoid giving services to non-members also, in a sense. And one of the reasons they do it is to ensure that those non-shareholders and non-members, after getting those kind of services which the FPC offers, will then voluntarily become members, because then they will be told that if you become a member, you get much more, you get dividends also, you become a shareholder, and you get much more benefits being part of the FPC than being a non-member. So this
So
is
essentially, it's sort of taking us to the next question, which we have partly answered. The question is by Jagdish ji, is the how the FPC is managing the member and the non-member, non-members in managing the business. What I heard you saying is that essentially they will not differentiate. If I am a member, my custard apple will be purchased and processed, and if you are a non-member, yours also will be procured, paid, and processed. And therefore, there is no preferential treatment to members, or there is no penalty. Not penalty is not the right word, but there is no non-preferential member, or there is no disincentive if you are a non-member. But what I heard you saying is that by giving business services to non-members, probably they are encouraging and tempting or luring कि भैया आप FPC member बन जाओ. But Jagdish ji has asked that question.
yes. So I agree with you, Ajit, in that interpretation of the question that you have taken. And I would also encourage Nikhila and Satish ji, if Satish ji is present, to share their views also, because my understanding may be limited to some extent in this aspect.
Yeah,
But,
Satish ji, can you come in? Can we sort of can we request Satish ji to come in and just share a few thoughts on these questions? Satish ji, aap hai? Yes, very much there, Satish Chandra. Yeah, maybe you unmute, and if there's a bandwidth, आप वीडियो भी लगा चला सकते हैं. But yeah.
जी जी.
Yeah.
सबको नमस्कार जी. क्या सवाल क्या है बताइए.
सवाल ये दो सवाल थे कि एफपीसी मेंबर और नॉन मेंबर के बीच में कुछ फर्कात या कुछ डिफरेंस रखती है क्या इन टर्म्स ऑफ बिजनेस ऑपरेशन. और गीता जी ने सवाल किया था कि एसएचजी को आपने शेयर होल्डर क्यों नहीं किया. शेयर होल्डर शायद करते तो उनका गवर्नेंस और मैनेजमेंट डिसीजन मेकिंग में भी ज्यादा हिस्सा या भागीदारी हो सकती थी.
पहला सवाल का उत्तर मैं दे देता हूं आपको कि या दूसरे सवाल से ही शुरू करता हूं. दूसरा सवाल है कि एसएचजी मेंबर को भी हमने शेयर होल्डर अब बना लिया है. प्रारंभिक चरण में हम लोगों ने नहीं बनाया, लेकिन अब हम लोगों ने उनको शेयर होल्डर बना लिया है.
इंडिविजुअल को या संस्था को, एसएचजी संस्था को या एसएचजी में हिस्सा लेने वाले महिलाओं को?
पूरी एसएचजी जो भी महिलाएं हैं सबको बना लिया है.
अच्छा,
तो एक तो हो गया. और दूसरा सवाल आपका है
बिजनेस नॉन मेंबर नॉन मेंबर में कुछ
हम फर्क करते हैं कि नहीं. तो ये फर्क तो करते हैं. शुरुआती दौर में तो हमारे पास इतना कुछ नहीं था इनपुट सप्लाई करने का, लेकिन सेकेंड ईयर से जब हम थोड़ा बिजनेस करने लगे तो जो हमारे शेयर होल्डर थे उन्हीं को हम सप्लाई करते थे इनपुट. उसके बाद हम अदर्स लोगों तक पहुंचे. अब तो बहुत ज्यादा लोगों के पास हमारी तक लगभग आप मान के चलें कि 5000 किसानों के साथ हमारा लेन देन आज के डेट में है। तो फर्क हमने 2 साल किया। थोड़ा जो शेयर होल्डर हैं उनको उनसे प्रॉफिट कम लेते थे, जो नॉन शेयर होल्डर हैं उनसे थोड़ा प्रॉफिट 2 रुपए ज्यादा लेते थे। तो अब वो भी धीरे धीरे जुड़ते गए। आज के डेट में हमारे पास 1700 किसान का शेयर होल्डर है, 1700 से ऊपर 1737 शेयर होल्डर हैं आज के डेट में।
बढ़िया बढ़िया बढ़िया। जो हमने नीरज जी से हमने 700-800 का नंबर सुना, वो अभी बढ़ गया है, वो बढ़ गया है।
वो तो बहुत पहले की बात थी ना, जब नीरज जी आए थे।
करेक्ट।
नीरज
अभी
जी आए थे।
दो सवाल है उसमें, जो आप भी उसका जवाब दे सकते हैं या निखिला, और छोटे छोटे विस्तार से मत दीजिएगा, संक्षेप में दीजिएगा। वन क्वेश्चन इज दैट has the FPC taken care of, I read the question, what do the FPOs do to ensure the resource system remains intact and being productive? Have they done anything with regard to protection and restoration of the forest land, ensuring sustainable harvesting? जो कि वहाँ FES से रंजीत आप ये पूछ रहे सवाल, क्योंकि ये थिक फॉरेस्ट एरिया है, तो हार्वेस्टिंग के समय में आप कुछ ऐसे पद्धति या सुविधा रखी है कि भैया बहुत ज्यादा एक्सप्लॉयटेशन मत करो, सो दैट रीजनरेशन हैपन्स। तो सस्टेनेबल हार्वेस्टिंग, उसके बारे में आप थोड़ा बता सकते हैं? इट्स एन इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चन।
बिल्कुल बता सकते हैं। ये तो कंप्लीट फॉरेस्ट लैंड, फॉरेस्ट एरिया में ही है एपीसी। और पहले की तुलना में अभी वनाधिकार पट्टे जो है ज्यादा से ज्यादा सरकार दे रही है किसानों को। तो किसानों को दे रही है, तो हम लोग, जिला प्रशासन भी ये कहता है और हम लोग भी ये कहते हैं कि इसको पैडी, धान की खेती मत बनाइए। जो जिस शकल में है, अपलैंड है तो अपलैंड ही रहने दीजिए। आप यहाँ मिलेट लगाइए या अदर्स क्रॉप लीजिए, मेज लीजिए, सनफ्लावर लीजिए, लेकिन पैडी का कल्टीवेशन मत करिए। या आप फॉरेस्ट काट रहे हैं तो आप बाड़ी स्टेब्लिश कर लीजिए। ये 2 बाड़ी लगाने पे भी छत्तीसगढ़ सरकार 10,000 रुपए देती है सर किसान को। अगर एक एकड़ का वनाधिकार पट्टा है उसके पास, तो अगर वो 1 एकड़ में बाड़ी लगा लेता है किसान, तो उसको 10,000 रुपए मिलते हैं, प्लस फ्री प्लांट मिलता है हॉर्टिकल्चर और फॉरेस्ट से। हाँ, लैंड अगर लेबल नहीं है तो लेबल कराने के लिए मनरेगा है, मनरेगा में लेबल हो जाता है। तो ये इस तरह से ये समस्या तो सॉल्व होती है।
बढ़िया।
हम लोग धान की खेती करने से मना करते हैं,
क्योंकि वो धान चावल लगाएंगे तो फिर वो पानी ज्यादा खाएगी और फिर बाकी वो पूरा सिस्टम बिगड़ सकता है।
नहीं सर, ये छत्तीसगढ़ पूरा स्टेट रेनफेड एरिया है। यहाँ सिंगल क्रॉप पैटर्न है, केवल मेनली खरीफ में पैडी ही होता है। बाकी कोई वाटर रिसोर्स नहीं है जिससे ये लोग और क्रॉप ले सकें।
करेक्ट।
तो जिनके पास थोड़ा बहुत पानी का सुविधा है, जहां बोर वगैरह है, तो लेते हैं। लेकिन यहाँ भी इजी वे में पैडी का ही कल्टीवेशन करते हैं दोनों सीजन।
इनका सवाल रंजीत पूछ रहे हैं, उसमें 1-2 लाइन में आप संक्षेप में जवाब दीजिए। कस्टर्ड एप्पल का सस्टेनेबल हार्वेस्टिंग कैसे आप करते हैं? कस्टर्ड एप्पल का, बाकी है तो आपने पेड़ लगाना वगैरह बात समझ गए, धान लगाना, उसके बाद लगाना। कस्टर्ड एप्पल का सस्टेनेबल हार्वेस्टिंग का कोई तरीका है क्या?
कस्टर्ड एप्पल का सस्टेनेबल हार्वेस्टिंग का तरीका ये है कि हम लोग यहाँ पे जब काम शुरू किए जिला प्रशासन के साथ मिलके, ये बहुत बड़ी मुहिम के तरह से चला है। यहाँ 7 तहसील है, 7 तहसील में 4 तहसील में कस्टर्ड एप्पल लार्ज स्केल पे आता है। लगभग 12,000 मैट्रिक टन का प्रोडक्शन है आपके कांकेर जिले में। माने पूरे छत्तीसगढ़ में सर्वाधिक जो प्रोडक्शन है वो कांकेर में ही है। हम लोगों ने ट्रेनिंग दिया कि सस्टेनेबल हार्वेस्टिंग के लिए कि आप डंठल को रहने दीजिए फ्रूट के साथ, उससे 3 से 4 दिन इसकी शेल्फ लाइफ बढ़ जाती है। और डंठल अगर आपने हटा लिया तो वो 3-4 दिन पहले खराब हो जाता है, यानी हफ्ता भर से ज्यादा इसकी सेल्फ लाइफ नहीं है। अब हफ्ता भर में अब चारों तरफ से अगर फ्रूट आने लगता है तो मार्केट में रेट कम हो जाता है। तब हम लोगों ने सोचा कि क्यों न पल्पिंग किया जाए, तब हम लोग पल्प में आए। और शुरुआती समय में तो हमने 1 क्विंटल 65 किलो बनाया, आज तो टनों टन की बात होती है। लास्ट ईयर भी हमने लगभग 8 टन बनाया था,
बढ़िया
न
बढ़िया।
होने के बावजूद भी। और
धन्यवाद धन्यवाद सतीश जी। थोड़ा मैं आपको यहाँ रुकावट डाल रहा हूँ। शायद उनका ये भी सवाल था कि साल साल में ये हार्वेस्टिंग हो जाए, ये आपने शेल्फ लाइफ बढ़ाने की बात की, ठीक है, बाद में थोड़ा ये सवाल ले सकते हैं। आई थिंक क्वेश्चन टू निखिला जी कि एज अ प्रमोटिंग ऑर्गेनाइजेशन सीएमएस और वृत्ति का आप जो कहा, एंड वी हर्ड नीरज जी also saying that we need a longer promotional effort, time, and so on so forth. But support is limited for a particular time, be it from about promoting institution, your organic link or enabling activities beyond the donation time or beyond your grant time. How would you? What are the mechanisms that you have tried? What has worked? What has not worked? Maybe you can respond in 2-3 minutes time, because we can take only one more question. You are on mute, Nikhila.
Nikhila, you are muted.
Yes. No, I'm just reading through the question once again because there was network issue. But as far as our experience with Vrutti, right, especially of experience of Vrutti with the FPOs, it's been that it requires a minimum of 5 years of intensive support by the promoting institution to the FPOs, and I'm saying at least 5 years of support, and it may go
Now that
beyond
is
that
said.
because
That is said. That is known.
yes,
That is said. That is
right.
known. The question is, how have you managed, or how have you were not managed, or what were the difficulties beyond the 5 years? That the focus of the question. 5 years and long time needed is what Niraj has already said. Now, what is your learning and response to the need to support beyond 5 years for 5, 7, 10 years, and where you don't have a grant support? So what has been the enabling mechanism, or you are still struggling with that? That's the focus of the question. So maybe direct reply to
Okay.
that.
Okay, so 2 points here. One is it has to be entirely market-led model here for the FPO to sustain. If we go with, so and so, this is the produce I have, and then I'll go and search for the market, it is not going to work. First, hit the market, understand the buyer requirement in terms of the quantity and quality clearly, and also ensure that it is not the buyer standard that you have to follow. You establish a standard at the FPO level. Majority of the FPOs, whatever commodities they're procuring and selling, are trying to meet the buyer's requirement. But what is the minimum quality standard that has to be there at the FPO level is something that every promoting institution has to think and enable the FPO to go through that space. And the second thing is the disabling thing is especially the seasonal factor only, because any buyer that you go, they will ask for the regular orders every month, but the FPO doesn't have the capacity, also because they're procuring from the farmers in that season, and the working capital needs are much more higher, and the credit worthiness of the FPO also has to be looked into, where majority of the institutions are finding it difficult to provide credit to the FPOs. So these are the 2 thoughts from my end.
Perfect. Niraj, as we sort of come to the concluding part, you have any comments, maybe 2-3 lines, as we will conclude in about 2-3 minutes time. Niraj?
Yeah, so very quickly, I think the lessons from this case study of Mahanadi are showing few things which are very positive also, in the sense that NTFPs, which we normally don't see FPCs getting involved in, they have shown and demonstrated that there is possibility of value addition. And despite there being no plantations, they have taken wild custard apple, procured it, processed it, and sold it with adding value. That's a very good thing. They have done it in a tribal geographies. Tribal skills have been built up in a short period of time. So for me, I think those 2-3 things are very good and very positive, and indicating that these things are doable. So that is the first thing that I would say. And the other thing is that the ecosystem is still not fully developed, as Nikhila mentioned. I mean, how does one really calculate the credit worthiness of tribal FPCs, and that those questions have still not been answered, I think. So maybe I'll stop here in the interest of time, but yeah, I'm happy to carry out this conversation further with anybody.
Abhishek, would you like to say a few things before I conclude?
Yeah, I would just like to thank everybody, thank Niraj, thank Nikhila for coming and sharing their their views, their reflections from the field, and carrying out this interesting discussion on Mahanadi FPC. Thank you, Ajit, also joining, taking forward the discussion and taking up, facilitating question answers. And I would like to thank Anish for taking care of the backroom technical requirements. It was an engaging discussion, and actually, discussions like this one and the previous 3 actually help us to go back to the case. So like these webinars actually made me read all these 4 cases in quite detail. And, since I am also doing research on FPOs, and sometimes it's very interesting and eye-opening to go back to these other cases which are not part of my study. They help me reflect a lot. So yeah, I think we'll close. Ajit?
Yeah, so thank you everyone. I think this was an interesting discussion. The last discussion was about an FPC in the mountains in the state of Uttarakhand. So from there we have traveled to central India to the dense forest of Bastar. And as we concluded last time also, each context has a different set of challenges. The communities are different in terms of their approach to farming, to NTFP, to the commodities that they work in, the experience that they have, the access to markets. For example, in this case, I think I recall reading the case study that the fruit pulp is sold as far as Indore and in Ahmedabad in the ice cream. So when you get a custard apple ice cream, probably it could be from Bastar Fresh. That's the brand that they have developed. And I like what Nikhila said at the end is that beyond the promotional time of 4, 5, 6 years, if the community and the community-led organization is able to deal with the market on an equal ground, and then you have capacities developed within the community, easier said than done. But if you have 2 or 3 stalwarts, the woman who is from the ranks, so to say, 1 or 2 professionals, and a kind of a dedicated, committed membership to the cause of the FPC in terms of supplies, in terms of getting inputs, there will be challenges like Corona. But if the community is kind of contributing not just the share capital, but also the produce, the size of the balance sheet does not matter. The size of the profit does not matter, because all the money has gone back to the producers in terms of the purchase price that has been paid, and the machinery is utilized. And therefore, beyond the promotional time also, this organization sustains itself. The membership has grown from 600, 700 to 1800, as we heard from Satish ji. And these kind of small efforts spread across country, districts, regions, blocks, actually make the FPC movement interesting. So there is no one model. These are all interesting, separate, vibrant models, and more they are, I think, more beneficial for the communities and the commodities and the context that they are. And therefore, thank you everyone. Thank you all invitees and the panel members and the 30 plus participants. We'll come back to you with the 5th seminar in the series sooner. So do continue logging on to our website. Also buy the book for your institution if you are universities or research institutions, and continue to reading the blogs. And we will come back with a new set of case study. Probably new, the authors will be different, of course, and Professor Shambhu and others will contribute. Have a good weekend and a good Friday, and see you in some other time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.